I want to talk about something I think a lot of people are carrying right now, and they're carrying it like it's a personal failure. This feeling of I'm behind, behind financially, professionally, perhaps spiritually, physically, even socially, behind in healing, behind in life. And the thing is, I don't actually think most people are behind. I think a lot of people are just no longer willing to lie to themselves because there's a very specific kind of progress that is built on denial. It's built on pushing, it's built on keeping up appearances, it's built on running a little bit faster than the truth so you don't have to feel it. And when you stop doing that, when you stop performing your life, when you stop telling yourself the story you used to tell yourself, everything slows down. Not because you're lazy, not because you're broken, but because you finally stopped dragging an old identity behind you like a heavy suitcase. So if you've been feeling behind, I want to offer you a different frame. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're in the honest part now. And the honest part can feel like, well, grief. Because the comparison culture teaches us that if you're not accelerating, you're failing. If you're not constantly upgrading, you're falling apart. If you're not hitting milestones in the correct order, something must be wrong with you. But what if the real milestone, the one nobody applauds, is the moment you realize, I can't keep pretending. I can't keep pretending I want what I used to want. I can't keep pretending that that relationship is fine. I can't keep pretending that that career is aligned. I can't keep pretending I believe what I used to believe. I can't keep pretending my nervous system can live like this anymore. Yeah, and that's not failure. That's maturity. That's the beginning of integrity. And integrity is expensive. It costs you the old story. It costs you the old timeline. It costs you the version of you that was willing to bargain with your own soul just to feel safe or approved of or on track. So let's talk about comparison for a second, because comparison is the engine that makes you feel behind. The comparison is sneaky. It doesn't just compare what you have, it compares your insides to other people's outsides. It compares your private mess to someone else's curated highlight reels, or it compares your Tuesday morning to their best moment of the year with perfect lighting and a caption that sounds like it came down from the mountain on stone tablets. And your nervous system believes it. Your nervous system hears you should be further along by now. And what that really means is you should be someone else by now, which is an impossible assignment. And yet we live under that assignment constantly. Now, add to that the fact that a lot of people are outgrowing identities right now, quietly, privately, not in a dramatic, I'm reinventing myself way, in a slow, sobering way, in a way that feels like, I don't know who I am anymore because the old identity used to work. It got you through. It helped you survive. It helped you be liked. It helped you be chosen. It helped you stay in control. It helped you feel like you had a place. And then one day you realize it's not true anymore, or maybe it was never true, but you didn't have the capacity to admit that. And when the old identity starts dissolving, you can feel like you're losing time, like you wasted years, like you should have figured this out sooner. But that's not actually what's actually happening. What's happening is that you have outgrown a lie. And it's hard to explain the grief of that because it's not the grief of losing something you loved, it's the grief of realizing you were living in a costume. Even if it was a beautiful costume, even if it kept you safe, even if it got you applause, it wasn't you. And when you stop wearing it, the room gets quiet. That's the part nobody prepares you for. When you stop lying to yourself, you don't instantly become radiant and confident and clear and fully healed. Sometimes you become still. Sometimes you become uncertain. Sometimes you become a little tender. Sometimes you become a person who has to relearn what you actually want because for a long time you wanted what you thought you were supposed to want. So if you're in that season, I want to normalize it. You're not behind. You're recalibrating. And recalibration looks slow because it's internal. It's not always visible. You don't get likes for it. You don't get a certificate for it. But it's the most important kind of progress there is because it's the progress of returning to yourself. Now, here's something I've noticed in my own life, and I want to say this carefully because I'm not interested in shaming anyone, including myself. A lot of us learn to use achievement as anesthesia. We learn to use busyness as a way to not feel. We learn to use productivity as a way to avoid the quiet question that eventually comes for all of us, which is this life actually mine? And when that question starts rising, you can't just scroll it away forever. You can't hustle it away forever. You can't buy enough things to drown it out. Eventually, you have to sit with it. And the moment you sit with it, you might feel behind compared to everyone who is still running. But what if the running isn't success? What if the running is fear? What if the running is a refusal to be honest? And what if you stopping, what if you slowing down? What if you finally telling yourself the truth is not you falling behind, but you coming home? Because there's a kind of timeline that isn't about milestones. It's about congruence. It's about alignment. It's about your insides matching your outsides. It's about being able to go to sleep at night without your soul tapping you on the shoulder saying, this isn't it. And that timeline doesn't look the same for everyone. Some people wake up early, some people wake up late, some people wake up after a heartbreak, some people wake up after a health scare, some people wake up after a quiet Tuesday where they suddenly realize they can't do this anymore. But waking up is not being behind. Waking up is the whole point. Now, let's talk about the quiet grief piece because I think this is where people get stuck. When you outgrow an old identity, you don't just lose habits, you lose communities sometimes. You lose your role. You lose the version of yourself that knew how to be in the room. And you might even lose certain relationships that were built on the old you. And that's real grief, real grief. Even when the change is good, even when the new life is more true, because your nervous system doesn't automatically trust newness. The nervous system likes what's familiar, even if what's familiar is painful. So in the beginning, integrity can feel lonely. It can feel like you're standing in a doorway, not who you were, not who you're becoming, just in the doorway. And the doorway is where the mind starts screaming, you're behind, you're behind, you're behind. But I want to offer you a different sentence for the doorway. I'm not behind, I'm in transition. And transition is sacred. Transition is where the new self forms, not in the flashy moments, in the quiet ones, in the ones where you're doing the dishes and you realize, I don't want to keep living like this. In the ones where you say no and your whole body shakes because the old you would have said yes. In the ones where you rest without earning it and it feels uncomfortable and you do it anyway. In the ones where you stop posting to prove you're okay. In the ones where you let yourself be a little unfinished. That's not being behind. That's being real. Now, I want to, bring it down into something practical, something you can actually do when the I'm behind story hits, because it will hit. Trust me, it's a strong pattern in our culture. So here's a question I ask myself, and you can borrow it if you want. Behind compared to what? Compared to whose timeline? Compared to whose values? Compared to whose nervous system? Compared to whose unseen support, compared to whose hidden costs, because you don't know what someone is paying for the life you envy. You don't know what they are abandoning in themselves to maintain that image. You don't know what their relationships feel like behind closed doors. You don't know what their body feels like at night. You don't know what they're going to keep doing to keep the story alive. So when you compare, you're comparing your truth to their presentation, and that will always make you feel small. The next question I like is, what am I no longer willing to pretend about? Because that question doesn't shame you, it clarifies you. And the answer might be simple. It might be, I'm no longer willing to pretend I'm okay with crumbs. I'm no longer willing to pretend I can work this hard and call it normal. I'm no longer willing to pretend I don't need rest. I'm no longer willing to pretend I don't need boundaries. I'm no longer willing to pretend I believe things I don't believe. And as soon as you name it, you reclaim power. Not the power to control everything, but the power to be honest. And honesty is the beginning of freedom. One more thing I want to say, because I think it's important, especially for people who are in a spiritual path or a healing path. Sometimes we confuse being behind with being in a winter season. Nature has seasons. We have seasons. And not every season is for blooming. Some seasons are for composting. Some seasons are for shedding. Some seasons are for dismantling what no longer fits. Some seasons are for becoming quiet enough to hear yourself again. And if you judge a winter season by summer standards, you will think you're failing, but you're not failing. You're in the part where roots grow. And roots are invisible, but they're everything. So if your life feels slower right now, if you're less interested in performing, less interested in chasing, less interested in proving, that might not be depression. That might not be laziness. That might be wisdom. That might be you finally valuing truth over speed. And I'll take truth over speed every time, because speed gets you applause, but truth gets you peace. And peace for me is the real wealth. So if you're feeling behind, I want to leave you with this. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're just no longer willing to lie to yourself. And that is not a setback. That is a graduation. So until later, love, peace, and release.